Hello, I am Robert Huston, creator and executive producer of Western Swing Rules program on YouTube, and I am conducting this Swing It Out segment for my friend Billy Bowles' Swingin Country program on KSSL 94.1, 107.3, and streaming worldwide on KSSL-FM.com. My guest this morning is Dr. James Paul Moore, who goes by Paul. His album Mandolin Magic has just been nominated by the Academy of Western Artists for Western Swing Album of the Year. So first of all, I'd like to welcome Paul to the program and say congratulations.
Well, thank you very much, Robert. I appreciate that.
Well, it's great to have you with us. And I will say, in the interest of full disclosure, Paul and I have known each other basically our entire lives. We started first grade together in Waldron Elementary School, Waldron, Arkansas. So that's another story for another day. But we're glad that you're with us today. And I'd like for you to describe a little bit about Mandolin Magic for us. Now, it's not your typical acoustic mandolin that we're talking about here, is it?
No, it's not. A lot of people ask me about that because their conception of a mandolin is the typical 8-string acoustic version that you often hear played in traditional country and bluegrass music. But the mandolin that I use on Mandolin Magic is very similar to the one Tiny Moore used. Tiny Moore being the great mandolinist who played with Bob Wills for many years, and Merle Haggard after that. The jazz mandolin is single-strung instead of having the little pairs of 2 strings like an acoustic mandolin, and it adds one additional tone on the bass side. So it's 5 single strings and really has much more of a sound like an electric guitar played up the neck.
And if you've ever seen one of these little electric mandolins, it looks like a tiny Stratocaster.
Very similar, yes.
But the sound is very, very unique, as you say.
Yes. Has its own signature tone. And actually, because of the configuration of its strings being tuned in perfect fifths, it actually has a slightly larger range than your typical 6-string guitar. You can really do a lot of stuff with it.
So that is one of the reasons why I would assume that the Academy of Western Artists have nominated Mandolin Magic for Western Swing Album of the Year because of its uniqueness. And not only is it unique because you're using the jazz mandolin, but also because of the selection of tunes, perhaps.
Well, many people, when they think of Western swing music, immediately the songs that pop into their mind would be things like Roly Poly, Fat Boy Rag, San Antonio Rose, all those classics that are definitely mainstream Western swing. And I want to say at the outset, so that no one misinterprets me, that I have nothing against those tunes. In fact, I love them and could listen to them all day. But one of my goals on Mandolin Magic was to show that Western swing is not limited to that cluster of tunes that are usually thought of as being Western swing. One of the things I have always admired so much about Bob Wills is that if something sounded good to him, he would do it. He didn't care what kind of label it had on it. If he liked it, he would play it in his style of music. And consequently, Western swing defies categorization. You can take virtually any song and give it a Western swing interpretation. So, in thinking through and planning this album, I wanted to pick out some songs that I liked, some of my favorite tunes that I could interpret in a Western swing flavor and feel. But they would be songs that most people don't think of as typical Western swing. And so, given that that was my purpose from the outset, I must say that I am honored beyond words that this album was nominated, because I guess it shows that somebody else besides me recognizes that Western swing is very far-reaching. You can't categorize it.
It certainly is. And I tell you what, let's do. Let's listen to a cut off of the album. This would be one that you would probably hear on a lot of different genres of recordings. And, of course, Western swing acts have done it as well. And it's the old standard 12th Street Rag.
Okay.
That was 12th Street Rag by Dr. Paul Moore off his album Mandolin Magic that has just been nominated by the Academy of Western Artists for Western Swing Album of the Year. If you're just joining us, my name is Robert Huston. I am creator and executive producer of Western Swing Rules on YouTube, and I'm honored to be conducting this Swing It Out segment for my friend Billy Bowles on his Swingin Country program on KSSL 94.1, 107.3, and streaming worldwide on KSSL-FM.com. Paul, tell us a little bit about the fact that you had cut a fiddle album several years prior to recording Mandolin Magic. So what propelled you to do an album, a mandolin album?
Interesting story. 10 years ago this month, I was in the middle of chemotherapy as treatment for lymphoma. I had been diagnosed diagnosed with that, and completely out of the blue. It turned my life on its end. And fortunately, I survived the disease, and I'm in complete remission today.
Congratulations for that.
10 years after the fact. But when I was going through this, unfortunately, the chemotherapy did some damage to the blood vessels in my arms, and it made it difficult for me to hold my fiddle for long periods of time because of the way that you have to hold your arms up in the air to play the violin or the fiddle.
Right.
And so I had always been fascinated by the work of the great Tiny Moore, and had in the back of my mind wanted a jazz mandolin like his. So when I had the arm damage, that propelled me to go ahead and commission a man in Tennessee by the name of Jonathan Mann to build this instrument for me. And I played it all during the remainder of my treatments, and by the time I got finished with it, I was pretty well able to get over it.
That is a fascinating story. And so, were you able to play the mandolin during the treatments or prior to the treatments?
You know, that's one of the reasons why I entitled the album Magic, because it was like magic for me in my recovery. I would sit in my recliner at home in between treatments, and I could hold that little mandolin comfortably, and I would just play it for hours. And it was a big part of my mental and, I think, physical recovery from the disease. When I was sitting in the therapy room one day, hooked up to the IV, with my eyes closed and the chemicals circulating through my body, I thought, you know what? I want to do an album with this instrument. And that was the beginning of the idea right there.
Well, that is just an incredible story, Paul. Just an incredible story. And let's listen to the title cut off of Mandolin Magic from Dr. James Paul Moore. This is Mandolin Magic. That was the title cut off of Paul Moore's album, Mandolin Magic, and that was Mandolin Magic. And I'm Robert Huston. I'm creator and executive producer of Western Swing Rules that you find on YouTube. And I'm doing this Swing It Out segment for my friend Billy Bowles on his Swingin Country program on KSSL-FM. Thank you all for joining us. My guest is Dr. James Paul Moore, and his album Mandolin Magic has just been nominated for Western Swing Album of the Year by the Academy of Western Artists. Paul, tell us a little bit about the personnel on this album.
Well, they are all friends of mine, and I set up the recording date in Tulsa, Oklahoma, to coincide with one of the Western Swing Society of the Southwest's festivals that they hold over at Fort Gibson Lake near Tulsa.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that a lot of my friends would be there for that anyway. So we set the recording up for the day just prior to the start of the festival. I used on steel guitar my friend Scotty Henderson from Missouri. Lead guitar was Daryl McGee from Inola, Oklahoma. Rhythm guitar was played by David Staples from Memphis, Tennessee. We utilized Tulsa's own Mel Buckner on drums, and bass was covered by Penny Miller from Mountain View, Arkansas. And my wife, Luella Moore, sang and played guitar on some of the tracks. Piano was covered by a guy named Robert Huston from Van Buren, Arkansas.
That was your biggest mistake.
Oh, I don't think so. He did a great job.
Where was the album recorded? You said it was in Tulsa.
It was recorded at Drap Studios in Tulsa.
Tulsa's was kind of a mecca, and you kind of wanted to do it there, right?
Well, really, I did. I mean, that is the mecca for Western Swing, and just the knowledge and the energy of that whole environment fed into the album. Tulsa-based John Woolley, who has a very good Western Swing radio program in Tulsa, actually wrote an article about the whole project and published it in Oklahoma Magazine shortly after we recorded.
It was just a great experience for me. Personally, as I said earlier, you and I have known one another forever, and it was just an honor for you to even ask me to be on that CD. I know you're tickled to death to be nominated by the Academy of Western Artists.
Tremendously honored. I just can't express.
Well, let's close with another selection. And what is the selection?
A tune called "It's All in the Game," which, talk about an interesting story, was written back in 1911 by Charles Dawes, who later became Vice President of the United States.
Seriously?
Under Calvin Coolidge.
Oh, my.
And the tune for many years was called Dawes Melody. And the great violinist Fritz Kreisler liked it so much that he used it to close his shows. Then in 1951, a fellow named Carl Sigmund wrote lyrics to it and changed the name to It's All in the Game. Well, it was recorded by several different artists through the 1950s, one of whom was Nat King Cole in 1956. Then, in the very year that you and I were born, my friend, 1958, a fellow by the name of Tommy Edwards put out a version that went all the way to #1. So this song, All in the Game, holds the distinction of being the only #1 tune on the Billboard charts to have been co-written by a Vice President of the United States who was also a winner of the Nobel Peace Prize. Talk about a piece of Americana.
Boy, no kidding, no kidding. Well, Paul, thank you so much. Now, let's remind everyone where they can get a copy of Mandolin Magic. That's something we've been remiss about. Please tell us how they can acquire a copy.
2 places. It can be purchased from my website, which is jpaulmooremusic.com, or you can get it through CD Baby, which is also an online service that sells CDs.
And when you do go to CD Baby, I will say that I think there's another album out there entitled Mandolin Magic as well. So make sure that if you are looking for Paul Moore's CD, that it is Paul Moore's Mandolin Magic, because I don't want to have any confusion about that.
Right.
Okay. Paul, once again, congratulations on your nomination for Academy of Western Artists Western Swing Album of the Year, and we wish you the very best with that. And thank you very much for being on Swing It Out on Billy Bowles' program today.
Well, Robert, I just want to take this opportunity to thank you for all that you're doing to support what, in my opinion, is the greatest of all music, Western Swing.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate that very much. And I also want to thank Billy Bowles for asking me to sit in on this segment for him today, and I appreciate it very much. Once again, my name is Robert Huston, and go on YouTube and check out my Western Swing Rules series, and hope you'll learn something if you're a musician. Now let's take it out with It's All in the Game.